My name is Alex Luong, and I'm here with my colleague, Preston Strait, to talk about Manscaped journey to the Jamstack. It's a year and a half process with tons of challenges and lessons, and we're so excited to be here to share them with you. Hopefully, this talk can help if you are considering the same transition at your own company. So, let me get started by introducing who we are and where we were. Manscaped is a DTC e-commerce company selling below the belt male grooming products. We were founded in 2016, and until 2019, we ran on the Shopify stack with a few SaaS services to help. Some notable ones are Recharge for the subscription system, Yotpo for reviews, Avalara for taxes, Klaviyo for analytics and marketing email. We worked with a offshore development team in Vietnam who handled the Shopify Liquid theme, and we had a small team of developers in the US who wrote script and put things together. So with our stack, as with every other software, there were bugs, but everything was fine. Nothing we couldn't handle. As we continue to grow and expand into different markets, we essentially duplicated our stack and basically just copy and paste our liquid theme again and again. And this compounded our issues, made it really challenging to make even the smallest update. Um, and it also caused various bugs as our several themes became out of sync. And after the fifth instance, we hit our breaking point.
Thank you, Alex. As he was saying, we knew we had to make a change in our entire process. Enter the Jamstack. Let's go over some of the benefits. It's fast. It's SEO friendly. Since everything is server-side rendered, it's optimized for SEO. It can handle large traffic spikes. Whether we landed a new influencer or have a big advertising campaign on TV or social media, we no longer need to worry about managing our servers to handle large spikes in traffic. Front end is decoupled from the back end. This allows us to develop features in parallel and connect via our custom API. It also allows us to link multiple sources together, removing a lot of the magic that was negatively affecting our developer experience previously. Lower cost for hosting, integrations, and maintenance. In the end, we're shipping a static site, removing the need to host and maintain our front-end architecture. Deploying code is effortless. Deploying code is as easy as pushing it up to GitHub and letting our hosting platform handle the rest. And since it's just static files, if there's ever an issue, we can always roll back to a previous build with just a click of a button. But there are some drawbacks. Not everything is perfect in the Jamstack. First, we're unable to integrate with a lot of our previously used plugins. A lot of the apps we use to power different aspects of our site no longer work outside of the Shopify storefront. Instead, we need to create functionality within our custom API layer. This led to high upfront development costs. This was the biggest drawback we encountered when making the transition. Not only did we need to rewrite the entire front end, we also needed to spin up a custom API layer to handle our checkout, account management, and user information. To build all this out, we had to scale up our team, but it took a lot of manpower to be able to build out all this functionality. Stale data issues. Depending on how you decide to build out your Jamstack app, since a lot of the runtime server requests are moved to build time, data can become stale. There are several ways to mitigate this, but it's something to be aware of. And a different deployment process. The workflow for deployment is amazing for developers, but it can be very confusing for the broader team. It is something that you should take into consideration and explain to everyone before making the move. So, we wanted to go over our gradual move to the Jamstack. Let's talk about our current tech stack. We chose Gatsby on our front-end framework because our team had familiarity with it, and we thought the benefit of static site generation was worthwhile for our use case. We chose Nest.js to power our API, and both our front-end and back-end are completely written in TypeScript. We are still using Shopify to manage our products, but now we are using Shopify's Storefront API via Gatsby Source plugin to get all of our product information. Netlify handles all of our front-end hosting. We have our production sites, which are consumer-facing, staging sites to test our newest front-end and API updates, and lastly, we use Netlify's deploy previews to showcase our latest PR updates with the broader team before going live. With all the above tools and a lot of hard work, we're still able to effectively use all of our primary SaaS platforms in our very brand new setup. Let's talk about some fun stuff. Functionality we never thought was possible. Here's an example of our product section component. It combines a gallery, testimonial, title, description, and our purchase form components. You can see there are a lot of similarities, but there are some subtle differences. We deliberately picked which data needed to be consistent across all instances and which needed to be dynamic. This allows us to easily update content in a single place instead of having to go through all of our instances one by one to make simple text updates, but also allows the flexibility to handle instance-to-instance content dynamically. I know this is possible to do in Shopify and Liquid templating, but with React we can add even more functionality and control our components with added features. Multilingual. Is our English homepage. One of our initiatives was to translate it into another language. We chose Germany as our test market because it was the largest market in the EU, and we thought it'd be beneficial to try it there. We investigated implementing this in Shopify previously, but many of the plugins used Google Translate directly, which was not the route we wanted, but some allowed custom translations, but they were too difficult to manage. We decided to go with Gatsby plugin React I18 Next, which implements React I18 Next directly in our Gatsby app. This plugin allows us to translate everything. Here's an example of a stylized title that you can see is rather complicated. It's composed of a smaller gold font element, larger white font element, and a styled superscript trademark symbol. And here's the German equivalent. As you can see, we were able to take translations from our translation team and break down the words in both English and German differently. Below the title, you can also see a bold Lawnmower 3.0 text that's not in the same place in the string. We are able to apply different styling and structure to any piece of content on our site. It also allows for stateful text. Here's an example of a frequency selector where users can select deliveries for every 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months. But in German, their pluralization of months is different. We were able to combine translations and user state actions to construct a usable UI, regardless of language. Not only are the buttons changing when users interact with it, but also the description below the frequency updates, depending on user state. On top of that, if you look at the second line, there's a $12.99 value, which has the structure of price plus text, where in German, you can see it's the opposite, text plus price. We're able to pass in variables, state, different structures, custom components, and even unique single and plural locale to really achieve anything on the translation front. We didn't just translate our homepage or landing pages. We even translated our account management system, checkout, and all of our emails are fully translated from the top to the bottom. It was a huge undertaking, but I believe it really paid off. And the best part is we have this in place, so next time we decide to translate our site into a different language, we can do it with ease.
When transitioning into the Jamstack, we sat together as a team to analyze our website and see what is static and what is dynamic. For us, static means that we can get this data at build time so that we can build HTML pages. And when customers visit the site, they won't have to talk to any sort of service or servers to get those data. And for dynamic, it's the complete opposite. For dynamic, those would require some sort of server, and we would need to scale that server up and down depending on the traffic for that specific portion. The reason why we do that is, as a team of primarily front-end developers, we try to do as much on the front end as possible. So let's see what is static and dynamic on Manscaped. So for dynamic data, we know that checkout is definitely going to be dynamic. And we need to talk to the server during the checkout flow. And order history or subscriptions data or just customer profile page, we know that it is going to be dynamic, and that is completely fine because not every customers are going to use those features. Whereas for static data, we know that products and collections are going to be static because we can use a plugin, Gatsby or Shopify, to get this data at build time. Another thing is pages and content, where we can get the data from CMS. And in our case, we just use Markdown, and there's Gatsby plugin for those. So these data can pretty much construct the storefront sections. However, there are one portion of the storefront that we are not 100% sure, and that is reviews. Back in the legacy Shopify stack, we use Yotpo, and all we need to do was to include the Yotpo script into our Liquid theme, and everything would just magically happen. And that really is the beauty of the Shopify ecosystem. When we move to the Jamstack, we're still using Yotpo, but we're gonna have to rebuild the integration ourselves. So that it begs the question: is reviews data static or not? And the knee-jerk reaction is that it is not, because there are new reviews coming in every hour, every day. However, when you really think about it, there is a reviews process. There's an approval process for every new review. So when a customer write a new reviews, that review doesn't really show up in real time. So there's still hope for us front-end developer to handle this at build time. So we did, after a little bit of research looking into this, we did run into a problem, and this is the problem. You can see there are 6,000 reviews for this product, and there are several other products with thousands of reviews. And this would equate to megabytes of data that is simply not feasible to send to customer browser every time they visit our website. We look into pagination a little bit, but Gatsby, the Gatsby data layer doesn't work well with pagination, especially at runtime. So after a lot of research and trial and error, we came up with a very interesting technique. So the way we handle it is at build time, we will fetch the reviews data, or 6,000 of those, and then depending on the pagination rule. So let's just say that on every reviews page, there are 10 reviews per pagination. What we can do is we can chunk those 6,000 reviews into chunk of 10. And for each chunk, we will write a JSON file in the public folders. And what happens with the public folder is when we deploy to Netlify, the public folder will go into the CDN. And because those are JSON files, those would be completely publicly accessible via HTTP request. So every time a customer visits our storefront website, the website will just make an HTTP request to the CDN to fetch the data. And because it's the CDN, we don't have to worry about spike in traffic. We don't have to worry about provisioning servers to handle the traffic load. And also because it's on the CDN, it's much, much faster than wherever we want to store the reviews, whether it's the Yotpo service or our own MongoDB or whatever. So when we were doing research into this problem, there's not a lot of resources out there for Gatsby data layer and pagination. So I'm really excited to have an opportunity to share this technique that we found out with you today. Subscription models is definitely one of the big reason why we decided to make the move into Jamstack and have a custom subscription system. It is definitely one of the more challenging portion of the project. And over the past year working on this, there are tons of lessons and lots of tidbits that I learned through running this in production. I can definitely like sit here and talk for a whole talk just on this topic alone, but because it's a little bit beyond the scope of Jamstack and time doesn't permit, I just want to quickly point out that the move into Jamstack definitely gave us the flexibility to pursue a lot of the business need on this side. Um, and lastly, I want to talk about some considerations, and this is very similar to the disadvantages that Preston mentioned earlier about Jamstack, but I want to tie this in with Manscaped. So first of all, checkout is hard, and if you can use a third-party checkout like Shopify or Stripe or Recharge, I'll definitely encourage you to do that. Um, it was very challenging for us to build the checkout flow, both the front end and the back end portion. However, now that we successfully have our own custom backend, custom checkout, it really gave us the flexibility to pursue our business initiative, like post-purchase upsell and so on. Another thing is that data migration is hard, and in the old system, we have data all over the places. So orders in Shopify, subscription in Recharge, payment method in Braintree, and so on. When we move to our own system, we uh, want to pull them into our own database so that it will become the source of truth. And we know that this is going to be a huge undertaking, but we still underestimated how hard it is uh, to properly execute this. And this process involves a lot of script as well as data, as well as webhooks, so that we can maintain data integrity as well as keeping data in sync. Another point of consideration is that we need to rebuild all integrations. When moving into the Jamstack, we lost the rich ecosystem that Shopify provide, and we talked a little bit earlier about Yotpo, but it's not the only thing. We had to rebuild Avalar integration, Klaviyo, and so on. And this effort requires a very deep understanding of how the system worked to recreate. And lastly, I want to slightly touch on the cost argument. So a lot of people say that moving into Jamstack is great because it's a lot cheaper. And while that is true, at Manscaped, we went from a team of 2 to a team of 10. And so basically, we just move the cost of operation into developer salary. And while it made sense for us and our business, I want to point this out so that you can also consider this and see if that is the case for your business.
So I gotta say, we've done it. The transition is finally over. We have successfully moved all of our sites to a unified Jamstack architecture. Finally. Currently we have the United States, Canada, European Union, United Kingdom, and Australia, New Zealand storefronts, with more to come. After just over a year and a half of hard work, we are now at the stage where we can move away from transition and work on optimizations. Some of our future initiatives are: we want to improve our developer experience. In the process of moving, we had to cut some corners to implement all the features needed in every instance efficiently. We are finally able to rethink some of these quick updates we knew we had to spend some more time on. We want to establish a design system. We rebuilt our entire site, but we are still stuck in our old designs. Updating our look and feel would have been near impossible in our Shopify architecture, but we now have the tools to rethink our brand, and we can do it in a good, structured process. We want to increase our testing coverage. The great thing about moving to the Jamstack is we can now implement features we've always wanted. We already have TypeScript. That's our first layer of security, and we're continuing to add more things to our testing coverage. We're using Sentry for our API and browser error monitoring, React testing library for unit and component testing, and Cypress to test our production code on every release. Implementing these tools gives us the added comfort that everything is running smoothly, especially on the weekends. increased frequency of our continuous deployment strategy. Since we're using Gatsby, we really wanted to increase the frequency of our deploys. Implementing more tests will allow us to not only have better peace of mind, but we can also confidently kick off builds whenever updates are made without us needing QA or watch for regressions. And lastly, we want to improve our performance, accessibility, and overall user experience. With all these above initiatives, we know we can improve on all the metrics and deliver not only a better experience internally, but a better experience for all of our customers. That is it for our talk today. Thank you, Netlify, for inviting us to share our journey, and thank you everyone who participated in this stream. It's been a wild ride, but it's just the beginning of our Jamstack future here at Manscaped. Thanks again.